and welcome to our quarterly cybersecurity awareness training. And in addition to this, at the second part of our training today, we'll do a nice walkthrough with Microsoft Teams. This is the program we all use for so many things, and I don't want to take anything for granted with this program and make sure everyone has a good understanding of all the things it has to offer and the things we can do with it in the future. Maybe there's some things you don't know it can do or how to do something. So we're going to cover Microsoft Teams on the second half of this training. So with that being said, let's get going with the first half of our training. So we're going to talk about in the first half a whole bunch of things with cybersecurity, phishing, ransomware. We'll touch on two-factor authentication, data privacy, keeping our devices secure, keeping secure at home, and why we're on the run. And then second half, as I said, we'll talk a little bit about Microsoft Teams with a nice complete walkthrough. So what is cybersecurity? Well, cybersecurity basically is the act of organizations protecting their infrastructure, protecting their networks, protecting their information from bad guys, making sure that all the information we have is available to those who need it and not available to those who do not need it. And this has become a very complex part of any network management solution. So cybersecurity efforts must be prioritized in organizations of all sizes, both in the public and the private sector, as well as in our personal lives. We all should be aware of cybersecurity, just how we deal with our own email, our own banking, financial documents, photos, and we'll talk about some of that later. So there are many dangers with a weak cybersecurity effort, and I just want to touch on 6 of these. So number one is if there's a weak effort, bad solution in place, bad management, of course a risk is malware being placed on your network, which can damage or erase your data. An attacker breaking into your system, actually altering files. Also, number 3, an attacker using your computer to attack others. Number 4, an attacker stealing your credit card information and making unauthorized purchases. Number 5, an attacker stealing and holding your data for ransom. And of course, an attacker selling your information or releasing your information to others. Now, with this description, I have it pretty generic. This could be for any individual person, of course, but all of these risks are there for organizations in the private and the public sector of all sizes. So, of course, the liability risk here for organizations cannot be measured. Information being stolen, locked, damaged, sold to other people is a huge liability risk for organizations. And of course, in addition to liability risk, entire networks often must be rebuilt, resulting in organizational downtime and the cost associated with rebuilding a compromised infrastructure. In our own organization alone, this would cost us tens of thousands of dollars at least, and many weeks or months of downtime for your organization just to get your information back, let alone where did it go and who has it. So the biggest threat today in cybercrime is phishing. So what is phishing? Phishing is a cybercrime in which a target or targets are contacted by email, telephone, or text message by someone posing as a legitimate institution to lure you into providing sensitive information. And that's the whole idea of phishing. They're trying to trick you, or trick an organization or a staff member into thinking you're somebody you're not, so they will more readily provide information or take action they wouldn't otherwise do. And when this information is stolen, it is used to access important accounts. It often results in identity theft, financial loss, as I said, liability risk, and financial disaster. So common features of a phishing email, and a phishing email you hear from me and from us all the time, And that is because it is the most common way for criminals using cybercrime to steal information. It used to be viruses. Viruses are still a big problem. But phishing is the number one risk for all of us today. And how can you avoid being a victim of phishing email? Number one, something we all learn at a very young age, right? If it's too good to be true, it probably is. If you have an email that you won a lot of money, or you anything that sounds too good to be true, pass it on and don't investigate it any further. Sense of urgency. This is a very common one in places of business. Especially, I'll use us for an example. All of our email addresses are exposed to the public, and this is for many reasons. We are a local government. We have an obligation to share our information and be available to the community that we serve. And that is why our information is available, because we have an obligation to do that. So email addresses are exposed. So they will take an email that say it's from the borough manager, and they will know that this person emails these group of people all the time. So and I'll show you some samples of this later, where you'll get an email from your boss who's asking you to do something. Many of us will jump immediately if it's our boss and want to act and do a good job. They're trying to get a sense of urgency. In the private sector or at home, you may get an email that says it's from the FBI, or it's from your credit card, or from your bank. They're trying to get the sense of urgency so you will respond before thinking. Hyperlinks. Hyperlinks in email messages are always dangerous, and you must make sure that the email came from someone you were expecting the message from. I like to say, if it's an unsolicited email, use caution when responding to these messages. And of course, attachments. Avoid attachments if you can. If you have an attachment and you are not perfectly aware and confident who it came from, ignore the attachment. Both when it comes to attachments, hyperlinks, sense of urgency, all of these. Reach out to the sender independent from the email. So if it says it's your bank, or if it says it's your credit card company, or a business you deal with, external of the email, ignore the email, reach out to them outside the email. For example, while I was on vacation, I'm going to put my video on so I can tell you this story. So while I was on vacation last month, just by chance, I got an alert, a text message, that our Chase Disney Visa card was exposed, and did I make a hotel reservation in Tennessee? Well, of course I didn't make a hotel reservation in Tennessee. I've never been there, and I was at Disney. So, but although the text message ended up being a legitimate message from Chase, it was worded kind of strange. I wasn't very confident. So what I did, of course, is I reached out and called. I flipped over my credit card and I called Chase directly. I didn't even open up the app. I was walking around, enjoying the weather. I flipped the card over, called the number, verified that the text was from them, and then, yes, in fact, someone had tried to book a hotel in Tennessee. And everything is fine. They sent me a new card. They closed that card number and gave me a new one. The idea here is I reached out independently from that text message. Even though I was fairly certain it was from Chase, I still made a phone call. Did not respond to the message. So, back to the PowerPoint. Let's go up to the next one. Holidays. I just want to mention holidays. Phishing emails, messages, are extremely common on holidays. Here at Westchester, on holidays, and especially the big three. The big three that the cyber crime and phishing messages are very, very common are Thanksgiving, followed by Christmas, and then followed by July 4th. Every one of these holidays, just here alone, are suspicious email here, or spam, or phishing emails, 100-fold more than on a normal day. And the reason that is because cyber criminals know we are all very busy during the holiday season. We want to get out of the office, we want to have a time with our family, and we're distracted. going to put the video, my video on here again. About 3 Thanksgivings ago, I was actually getting ready to leave at 3 o'clock, holiday weekend, and as I was walking out of the office, we were just got slammed. We had an alert, and we came in and looked at it, and we were getting thousands of phishing emails every minute, just pouring in. And we really had to stop what we were doing, and we spent the entire weekend cleaning that up. These messages, for the most part, did not make it into users' email accounts here. Some did, but we were able to remediate and get them out, but it just kind of ruined that weekend. And the idea here is cyber criminals know that people are distracted during the holidays. And you may not notice, but IT people are people too. And we want to enjoy the holiday with our family. And criminals realize that, hey, they might be distracted. Maybe they won't pay as much attention. So that's why holidays are really important, even with your personal email. So be aware of holidays. And we talked about what is ransomware. Well, ransomware is basically an attempt to steal or encrypt your files. And it's exactly what it is. It's modern digital train robbery, where they hold your files, they encrypt them with a code that only they know, and they will give you 7 days to provide so much money, either through Bitcoin or old-fashioned dollars, and they want this money, or they're going to destroy the encryption key. And I won't get into how they do that, but the encryption is just like you do when you're banking. You bank, you have an encryption key that allows it, when you log into your bank, it knows it's you. It's all done in the back end of it, and you don't see this. Well, cyber criminals use that very needed secure technology to their own benefit, to lock your files in hopes to steal money from you. So who is the target of ransomware? Well, quite frankly, everyone's a target. But big targets are universities, medical facilities, and local governments. And that is simply because these types of organizations very often have very small technology budgets. Very often they will outsource their technology services, or they will have a very small technology staff. They will not invest in security infrastructure. All these things can be expensive, but they really do protect an organization. If you have a proper security department for your size of your organization, and you invest in the proper security tools, you train technology staff, you train your regular staff to use these tools and to be aware. Many organizations simply do not do that until it's too late, and then even then they probably don't do it. And then some organizations, outside of what I just said, are really, they're targets because they often pay the ransom. Police departments very often will pay the ransom. Police departments are a part of local governments. Very often, not the best security, not the best solutions, not the best training. And police data is very, very important. It's a huge liability risk to have it stolen and exposed. So they know very often police departments specifically will pay the ransom. And we'll talk about paying the ransom and what that means down the road. And even if you're not in any of these categories I just mentioned, be aware every one of us is at risk. People get exposed and victims to ransomware at home, and they have their own information stolen. It could be photos, it could be banking information, it could be all kinds of documents. So they do target individuals, not as popular as the big organizations, simply because they don't have as much money. It's an individual, but everyone's at risk. How can you prevent being a victim of ransomware? Well, here are some tips. One is, of course, keep your operating system patched and up to date. If you have Windows 10 or Windows 11, make sure you're doing all those updates. Many of the updates Microsoft does do are security updates responding to current threats. Don't allow others to install applications on your computer. Have it locked down so only you, even at home, you can set this up that only you can install a program. Here in our organization, only the IT staff can install programs. This is done to make sure the only programs that are installed are safe, legitimate, and necessary. Even at home, you can make it so only you can install programs. Grandchildren, children, friends, and family won't be able to do that, and will ask for your password. I don't cover that here, but if anybody wants to know how to do that, be sure to let me know. It's a good tool at home that people don't use normally. Of course, always respond to emails. Thought, caution, and common sense. Common sense is one of the biggest tools that you can use to protect yourself from ransomware. Of course, have an up-to-date antivirus application running on your computer. Here at work, at the borough, we have one that we manage on the back end for everyone. At home, make sure you have one. I actually don't recommend paying for one. For most people, the built-in Microsoft Defender is what I recommend. It works, it's free, and it gets updated with all your other Microsoft updates. And of course, back up your files, both at home and in the cloud, separate from your property. So if something happens to your home or to your job, your files in your job, they're backed up off-site and you can get to them. Having your files in Dropbox or OneDrive are not the same as backing up your files. We can cover that later if anybody wants to ask me why is OneDrive or Dropbox not the same as a backup. We could touch on that at another time if you're curious. So here's some stats I just want to show everyone. So here's industries in the United States reporting ransomware attacks last year. This is 2021. And you can see right here, government organizations are the number one being victimized by ransom attacks, for all the reasons that I mentioned earlier. And most common types of how ransomware makes it to your computer is number one, as we talked about, phishing emails, right? I'll just touch on these. Lack of cybersecurity training. Organizations do not train enough their staff in cybersecurity. I've been saying this for a long time, it's just as important as harassment training or any other kind of necessary training an organization wants or needs to have their employees educated on. Weak passwords. Having bad passwords or weak passwords is a recipe for disaster. You should have a separate password for every account you have, and they should be encrypted passwords, meaning long, special characters, numbers, lower characters, upper characters. The only way you can do that is through a password manager. Poor user practices, being gullible, exploring bad websites, clicking on ads, and other. So, some interesting stats there. Should you pay for ransomware? Okay. The answer that I give is no. And most cybersecurity experts are going to tell you no, do not pay. If you do pay, there's no guarantee that the bad criminal is going to, hey, is there actually a good criminal? No, there's only bad criminals. So the bad guy, you're dealing with a bad guy. You don't know if he's going to give you your files back. And remember, even if they give you your files back, they still have copies, I can guarantee you, of the files. And if you don't change your ways in the way you manage your information, you could just be as easily exposed and victimized by cybercrime again and another ransomware. So the key is not paying ransomware, is putting all the tools in place that we talked about, so it's very unlikely to happen. And backups are also a big part here, that if you do all the right things on a security level and you still are exposed or victimized, if you have good backup practices, that could be your saving grace as well. But it's still going to cause you a lot of pain when you go to put your network back together after being exposed. And also be aware that just because someone says, and you get an email that you've been a victim of ransomware, there is this thing called scareware, which is the cheapest kind of ransomware, where your files aren't ransomed, they're not locked down. They're just telling you they're going to lock them down. They're going to say, hey, we're going to lock your files on May 5th, and it's May 1st right now, unless you send us so-and-so money by this date to this location. They're trying to scare you. May 5th will come and go, and you won't even have ransomware. So that's a new tactic by the laziest of the lazy cyber criminals. And as I said before, paying the attacker does not guarantee you're actually going to get your files back. And even if you do, I'll repeat this, They still, I guarantee you, have the original copies of the files. And if you have personal information of customers, patients, employees, they could still release that to other people, or again, threaten it in a month that they're going to do it. Or they might not even unlock your files if you pay. Or they might lock them in again in a week if you haven't changed your ways with your security solution. I know I'm repeating some of that, but it's very important. Here's an example of the early life of a phishing message that came through our organization in February. So here, I just want to show you number one. Now this is all on the back end of our security solution. And this one was stopped. No, this one actually made it through. We had to remediate this one. So here you can see it says it's coming from this person, but we all know this is not his address. This is a fake email address that's spoofed to look like that with this name. The receiver did not receive this. The receiver only saw this. Okay? Let me go back there. And this is what the message says. It says, I'm in a meeting at the moment. I'm planning to surprise some of the staff with gifts, and I would like you to handle this for me. Your confidentiality will be appreciated until I reveal the beneficiaries. Let me know if you can get this done. And they sign it with the spoofed person's name and even their title. Very often these messages are very generic, unusually worded, and if you think about the message, you probably almost always guarantee it does not sound like the person it says it's coming from. Remember I talked about a sense of urgency earlier? Well, what happened was, this name is spoofed. This person is the receiver's boss. The boss responded, I'm good, what can I do for you? Now, this is phishing. The cyber criminal knows, or the bot that's doing this knows, hey, I got a response. So now it's going to ask another question to see if they're really reeling them in, if they're coming in. And it says, hi Dave, are you available at the moment? I need you to handle a project. I'm heading for a meeting at the moment, I can't talk. Just send an email when you receive this. Now by this point, this receiver of the message realized that something was up and reported it, and we were able to remediate this message that had gone, that made it through the system and went to like 10 people. But we were able to clean it up, no damage done. What happens here is after this, if the receiver, Dave, would have responded to this message as opposed to reporting it to IT, the next one surely would have asked for some personal information or some banking information or credit card information. So this was stopped. So it takes 2 or 3 messages before the person, the cyber criminal, will actually ask for information. It's trying to make that connection with the receivers that they could trust before they actually start to ask them for stuff. Just thought this was a nice way to show the early life of a phishing message. Okay, we're going to touch on 2-factor authentication real fast. Now here, earlier in the year, it might have been end of last year, we did put in 2-factor authentication for our organization. So when anyone's using our email or Microsoft information, they have 2-factor authentication where it sends them a PIN code, or they can use the Microsoft Authenticator app to prove their identity. Banks and other organizations have been doing this for a while. I do believe eventually 2-factor authentication will become a normal way for all of us. If you're not using 2-factor authentication with your email and your financial institutions, I would recommend that you explore that as often as possible. Sometimes it can be hard to set up. I recommend finding an authentication app that you want to use. There's 2 good ones. Microsoft Authenticator app is the one that I use and recommend, but there also is the Google Authenticator app and the LastPass Authenticator app. They are all well worth your time to pick one and start setting up your accounts. If anyone wants to have help setting up your accounts or learn more, be sure to reach out to me. For here at Westchester, it's all set up. You can go in at any time to your Microsoft portal and hit security information. And down here, you're going to see with me, I have a couple of different options. So you can choose, do you want to use an app, Authenticator app, or get a text message or an email? So I have all 3 set up in case I can't get to one of them. But you can change yours, update yours right from here in your Microsoft Authenticator, in your Microsoft 365 account. And real quickly, data privacy. Of course, as more of our data becomes digitalized and we share more information online, data privacy is even more important than it's ever been before. Even as an individual, you have a lot at stake when it comes to your data privacy. And remember, we all had in the past, and we still do unfortunately, file cabinets with locks on them. We all have safes at home or safes at your organization because there is information you do not want to share. Just because it's digital doesn't mean it deserves any less attention. It deserves even more attention. But I do want to say, well, quickly, digital document management and digital storage of data can be more secure and is more secure than putting a file or paperwork in a safe or a file cabinet. Let's just suggest or say that you have all your files in a file cabinet at home. They're very important. Or at your office. Well, a couple of things can happen to that data, those files. One is someone can actually steal them, even if they're in a locked file cabinet. People steal things all the time. There could be a fire or a disaster in which you can't get to that file cabinet any longer because it's been involved in a fire and it's burned up, or it's in a building collapse, or good old-fashioned losing it. Somebody puts it in the wrong file cabinet and you can never find it again. Those things are much less likely when they're digitally stored. They can be secured, easier to find, and be more available to you quickly when you or someone else that you trust needs them. So just because it's digital doesn't mean it's less secure. It actually can be more secure if we do it correctly. So what is data privacy? Well, think about this. You have no problem giving someone your name. You meet someone on the street or at a restaurant or at an event, and what's your name? My name's Bill Mann. But I'm not probably going to tell that person I just met my date of birth, my social security number, any of these personal identifiers. So that's what you need to protect. So think about it. What would you tell someone you haven't met before? That's what you don't want to tell those new people you meet is what you want to protect. That's personal information. So personally identifiable information in the health business, it's called personal health information. These things are where companies can have a huge liability risk if this information is stolen, released to the public. Companies have lost millions of dollars by falling prey to ransomware or a security hack, and this information gets stolen and released or sold to other companies. And this happens all the time. And when you hear about, let me put my camera on here, it's going to be a little lengthy here. When you hear that Sears was hacked, or Chase was hacked, or Walmart was hacked, you're hearing about that normally months after it had already taken place and was cleaned up. And the reason that is these companies are for profit. It does not do them any good in their eyes, to release to the public immediately, we have just been hacked. People lose confidence in them. So normally what happens is they discover it, they work on it, in a scramble, they try to clean it up. Then legal gets aware of it, and it's legal, and the courts who will eventually make them release what happened to their customers. The problem with that is months have gone by and you did not know that your information was exposed, and you weren't even able to go and maybe change your passwords or check your own credit report or check anything you wanted to check to see if you were victimized by that, because they told you many months afterwards. So always be aware of that. When you hear of a cyber hack of a company and customer databases were exposed, you're hearing about that, if you read the small print, usually several months after it's occurred, which is why protecting your information is so important. You cannot trust others to do it for you. Let's see, where are we here? So we pretty much covered that. I'm almost done here, guys, girls. So real quickly, how to protect your personal information. Do not share personal information on social networking sites. This is common sense. Avoid connecting your computer to any public internet connection, especially when you're dealing with monetary transactions like your bank account. Do not give away personal information to anyone on the internet, including through email. Many times these people are imposters. And remember, once you give someone information, you cannot control what they're going to do with it. Also be careful of phishing sites and phishing emails. Always make sure your computer or your personal devices are being scanned with antivirus malware programs to make sure they're safe. Your mobile devices are now mini computers. They are computers. They have a lot of information about you and often your company on them. So treat them with the same security you would treat a computer or your own personal information. Think about it. A lot of you, if someone just got a hold of your iPhone or your laptop or your Android phone, and if they were able to get into that phone, you didn't have a PIN code, or they got a hold of your PIN code or whatever, whether you were securing it or not, they can learn a lot about you just through photos, contacts, videos, location history, which is stored on there, often your health and financial data. All this information is sitting on the phone that we carry around with us. So treat it with a very securely. So it's important to make sure your mobile devices are safe and that they're up to date with the latest updates. Make sure you have PIN numbers on your phone, or your eye scan or biometrics. Make sure that there's someone has to hit a PIN or a password or biometrics to get into your phone if it's lost or stolen. And real quickly at home, make sure your router does not have the default password that Comcast or Verizon or whoever you bought it from has it on there. Make sure you go in and you change that password on the router. Do not use the default password. Make sure you have wireless encryption turned on in your router. They all come with the default SID. And that's your service set identifier. Make sure that you have a custom one for that. Create a guest network for your friends and family, so when they connect, they're not actually connected to the same Wi-Fi band you're on. So you can create a guest network for your friends and family. Stop auto-connecting to open Wi-Fi networks. It's not way about your home, but it's about your personal information. If you're out and about, if you have 5G or 4G on your phone, you're much better doing banking and email and anything just through the 4G or 5G network. These are encrypted networks. They are required to be so they are secure. Being on a public Wi-Fi that's free is not secure. So just stay on your LTE or your 5G network. Back in the day when data was expensive and cell networks were slow, companies were pushing their free Wi-Fi as a way to get you in to their coffee shop or their pub or their restaurant where you have free Wi-Fi, because they knew cell service was expensive and slow. Now you can pretty much get no limit to your data, and 4G and 5G is plenty fast. So there really isn't a whole lot of reason to connect to free networks anymore. Make sure you have a firewall, good security software at home. In conclusion, so make sure you understand cybersecurity is not just a job for our IT department, although it is our job to protect our organization and each other, but we all have a role to play in cybersecurity. Be the eyes and the ears. When you see something that's suspicious at work, and everyone does a great job of this here, report it to IT right away. No security solution is 100%. Sometimes something does get through. I would say about 95% of what we are attacked with is stopped. But still 5% of thousands of messages on a weekly basis that are stopped will still have some leakage there. And so be aware, and we're constantly looking at it ourselves. Don't be afraid to report something that ends up not being it. If you have received something that's suspicious, other employees may have received it too. So you're really helping all of us by reporting anything that you don't think looks right. Do not, once again, real quickly, especially at work, do not open attachments or click any links with an email unless you are certain the sender can be trusted. Always use strong passwords that are encrypted. Do not install unauthorized software on your company's devices. And that, it's very hard for you to do that because you do have you locked down. So you do have to come to see us. I know that can slow things down for some of us when we have to install something quickly, but it's the best way to protect ourselves. Keep your devices safe. Remember, your computers, be it your laptop or your mobile device for work or your computer, these are company devices. The company owns and is responsible for all the data that's on there. So treat it as as it's very important, and you need to protect it from unauthorized access. And as I said again, especially when you're using a work device, do not connect to a public Wi-Fi network. You can turn your hotspot on your mobile device. Then you usually have that now, right? Turn your mobile hotspot on, connect to that from your computer. Your computer will now have an encrypted, safe connection to the internet, so you can do your business. And I'm going to end this recording here. So if anyone has any questions about cybersecurity awareness, always do not be afraid to seek us out. Something we probably like to talk about too much. We have some exciting updates to our security solution that we will be adding in the next couple months, and everyone will hear more about that soon. So have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you later for Microsoft Teams training. Thank you.